Welcome to Career and Leadership Real Talk, the no-nonsense guide for ambitious managers who want to have more impact and progress their career. I'm Pamela Langan, a job search coach and expert CV writer specialising in helping frustrated professionals land the jobs and pay rises they know they deserve.
And I'm Jackie Jagger, a leadership and mindset coach specialising in helping newly promoted and new to role leaders to avoid the dickhead trap and lead with confidence. Between us, we've helped hundreds of leaders and managers to find new roles, take ownership of their careers, and handle the challenges that job searches and leadership responsibility inevitably bring. And now we're joining forces to share with you what we know has worked for our clients. Hello and welcome to this week's episode. This week we are talking about managing up when your boss is overwhelmed. So this has come from a conversation that Pam had with a client where their boss was put under loads of pressure and that was cascading down. So a situation that I'm sure many of you will relate to. Pam, tell us a bit more about this situation. What was going on for your client? How was it impacting on them?
So when the client came to me, originally they were job searching. They had reached their limit with this particular manager and it was time for them to move on. But as part of the job search process and thinking about what next and the type of roles and the type of people that they want to work with going forward, we did touch on the current relationship with their boss and what that looked like, what it felt, and also making sure that they didn't take any baggage into the next role. So the situation that they were in with this boss was that this boss was completely overwhelmed. They were getting all kinds of instructions from above. They thought they were protecting the team, but what they had actually done is put the team into absolute chaos. So my client was feeling overwhelmed. She knew her boss was overwhelmed. And she was in a situation where her confidence was starting to be affected because she couldn't do anything right in this boss's eyes. And she was working lots of hours. She felt like she was heading for burnout. She knew her boss was also probably at burnout point. And she was just like, enough. It's time to leave. It's time to go. And lots of people come to me in that situation. And I do think it's important to unpack what is going on, because otherwise it does hamper your decision making when you're moving into a new role, because you might move before you're actually ready or before you've made a decision because you just want to move away from this chaotic, crazy boss.
And this is the thing, isn't it? I'm sure people will definitely relate to that scenario. It's a classic of people don't leave companies, they leave bosses. And I wouldn't say that I agree with that 100% of the time, but certainly there are situations where the working relationship breaks down to a point where somebody feels like they have no option but to leave. And I think what you're pointing out there is there's a real risk that if you're leaving because you're moving away from something, then you might make decisions that you wouldn't make otherwise. And even if you are moving for the right reasons and you're moving to find the right thing, I think it's so key to have some strategies and some understanding of what's going on so that if you go somewhere and recognize the signs, you don't end up going from the frying pan into the fire. So what was the process you worked through with your client then? What had your client tried? What did they decide to try? How did they manage that situation in the time that they stayed in that role?
So I think the first thing for them was understanding why offering the help was actually backfiring on them. So what they were trying to do was almost rescue that boss and try and help them. And they assumed that they were doing things that were actually helping, but in that boss's eyes were maybe making things worse and then causing a whole range of negative behaviours from that person because they felt criticised, they felt like their competence was in question. So my client ended up in a situation where they're very much going head to head, and she really started to feel overwhelmed with that. And she felt like she was losing control in that situation as well. So she had a team of people she was trying to manage, and she was also trying to manage the expectations of her boss. Her peers were handling it quite differently, and rather than helping, we're just giving this boss a wide berth. And it just ended up in a real division within the team. Everybody was on eggshells, and it was a really difficult situation. And I think from the boss's perspective, she was obviously under pressure herself and just felt like it was all spiraling out of control. And then different people from the team who want to get involved, are they taking over? Are they trying to take my job? Are they trying to make me look incompetent? So I feel like it just got into a real kind of mess, and everyone's emotions were just on high alert, and nobody was really taking a moment to pause and think, what is actually going on here? What is the real issue?
And so how can somebody in that situation, if they're listening to this and relating, and they've either gone down the kind of going head to head route, or working themselves to the bone and working crazy hours trying to do more, or they're giving their boss a wide berth and those things aren't working, how can they identify what really is going on and start to uncover what might be a healthier approach to take?
I think first of all, you've got to look at what's going on underneath the surface of it. So trying to get a little bit more understanding of what is going on for your boss. Now, in that particular situation, there was a lot of confidential stuff happening. There was restructures that were coming up and things like that. So a lot of stuff that the boss couldn't share, that's fine. But then at the same time, you still need to try and get that understanding or gauge what could be going on for that person. And I think one of the additional difficult things for that person was that boss had some personal issues going on, and they'd shared like some top level stuff with the team as a way of saying, back off because I'm busy and I've got this personal stuff going on. But then that left my client in a situation where she was like, I need to be empathetic, but then at the same time, I need to figure all of this out. So what I advise her to do is like, go back, reflect what is really going on. Can she find out any other information? Can she speak to her manager about things that may be overwhelming her that she could support with at that point in time without jumping in, without taking over? And I think when you start having those conversations, sometimes in that case, the boss was thinking, I'm the only one that can handle these things at the moment. So my client was then given the reassurance, actually, I know you haven't got the time to train me or show me, but there are some other things that I could take off your plate. Would you like me to do that? And that was when their relationship started to change, because then the boss was like, oh, okay. Because then she could see my client had started solutionizing. So she wasn't trying to take over. She wasn't trying to gain some kind of development opportunity. She was simply saying, look, there's these things, I can take them off your plate. Can I help you? And I suppose in some ways that was great for that boss to go, okay, I've got the support of this person. They're not trying to undermine me. They're genuinely trying to help me.
And we've spoken before, haven't we, in our episodes on coping when your boss is a micromanager, and also when your boss sets unrealistic expectations of you, about how it's really difficult, but actually when you've got that challenging relationship and it's not going the way you want, the value of having empathy and stepping into your boss's shoes. And it is really difficult when you're frustrated with somebody and when it feels like they're just raining chaos from every direction down on you. But that having empathy is such a key skill and can make such a difference in those situations, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the key shifts was, rather than my client saying, let me help you, she actually said to her boss, what would make your job easier right now? And she was like, oh, and she said when they had that conversation, there was like that pause where you could see her brain almost ticking over, going, oh, okay. So it's like, that is it. Like, you want to actually make my life a bit easier. You want to make my job a bit easier. And she was like, okay. And then she started offering up some things that she felt could take a little bit of weight off her. So I think sometimes a little reframe as well is really useful.
Absolutely. And so what else could people do then? So if they're trying to get under the skin of what's really going on here and understand it, what other approaches might people be able to take to try and improve things?
So I think one of the main things that you can do is frame the support as more of a business efficiency. So rather than saying, let me take things off you, or what would make your job easier, you could position it as, look, if I do this, this would make this process run smoother. It could help us achieve our goal faster. Are you open for me to get started with that? So you can frame it more as a business efficiency and moving the business forward rather than, can I take something off your plate?
I love that idea. I think that just depersonalizes it, doesn't it? Takes the emotion out. It takes it about less of that personal relationship that might feel challenging and more about what are we tackling here? What's the task? And it's interesting because a huge amount of my coaching, I'm encouraging people to focus on relationships in order to achieve tasks. But there are times, and this is a great example, where actually the focus on task really helps to take the heat out of the relationship challenges.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing that really helped as well. So while the boss was like throwing everything into chaos on a daily basis, she was very much wanting to know what was going on. She was so scared of losing her grip and being asked, can you give us an update, and not knowing where the team was up to. So essentially what she was doing was micromanaging them. So one of the other things that my client did was said, would it be useful if I just gave you a weekly summary of what's going on? And she then provided a weekly summary of what she was working on, what the team were working on, what they'd achieved last week, so that if the boss was asked what's going on with the team, where's everyone up to, she could literally go to her email and go, okay, and reel it all off. And that was one of the key things that really helped to start releasing the pressure, because then she could take her mind off the day to day on what's going on, and approaching people to say, can you give me an update? And dealing with lots of different people to just having that one weekly central update.
And again, that shift from reactive communication of communicating about things that have happened in response to direct questions to being proactive can be really difficult to do when you're under pressure and when the goalposts are shifting on a daily basis. But it can head things off at the pass. And I think, again, sometimes it's hard to prioritize the time. It feels, I'm having to put together this summary or this report or communicate this thing. And actually, I should just be trusted to get on with it. But the value in terms of the headspace that you can gain by investing in that communication can make such a difference to your own well-being, to easing some of that constant reactive stuff that would otherwise happen.
Yeah, definitely. And there was another thing as well, which was an interesting one. So one of the other things that the boss created was a situation where people were constantly approaching with questions, because she had this door is always open policy. So what my client did was say, okay, for the next month, all of the questions need to come to me and I'll act as the filter. And then what she did then was just feed back any urgent questions or any urgent information through to her boss at times that they'd set, so that she wasn't being constantly disrupted throughout the day, which gave us some real chunky time blocks to be able to concentrate and get through the work that she needed to get through. So that was another thing that really helped as well, because I think people think if there's a door is always open policy, that they can just keep knocking on that door and keep sharing information, asking questions, which is great. And you want to encourage people to do that. But when you're up against it and people are knocking on the door all the time saying, have you got a minute? It creates more pressure in that day.
Just as you were describing that, I was thinking about a client that I was working with not long ago, and that was part of what we talked about, was for her to get done, and her situation was different. She didn't have this type of issue in terms of her boss, but just in terms of volume, I think it's so common that people feel like they should have a door is always open policy. They want to be approachable. They want to be a good leader, a good manager. And there is a feeling that should mean that I'm available to the team, but you can be available to the team without having constant interruptions. And by blocking off time where you can do what you need to do, and then creating specific time where people can ask you questions, bring things to the table, have discussions, you can boundary that. You can make that work for both you and them. It does not have to be, in order for me to be approachable, I have to be always available. So what else then can people do if they're feeling this kind of pressure, their boss is under pressure, and that is all coming downhill to them? What other approaches can help to stem the tide?
So I think the main thing is also like protecting yourself in that situation, because in this situation with my client, it could have very easily become a situation for her where she takes the pressure off her boss, but then she's then got all of the pressure onto her, because she's like, don't go direct to the boss, come to me and I'll filter everything through. But then all day long she's getting people approaching her with different questions and queries. And one of the things that she did in order to manage that, just like what you were talking through there, is she started putting some boundaries in place. So what she did was she asked people to collate the information, unless it was like super critical and urgent. She asked them to collate the information and the questions and to feed back at certain times of the week. So she made herself available for those times during the week, and at other times she made it clear when she wasn't available, when she needed to time block for concentration time. And that, what she said that resulted in, was actually people were given more considered responses, providing more considered information. And the questions that they were asking, they were like, oh, when I first thought of it, it was like this, but actually I've thought a bit around it, I've done a bit of research, and now the question is this. So it was, they were more informed questions. So what that meant was she became the gatekeeper for her boss, but then she actually put some boundaries in place for herself. And she started to coach the team that they needed to respect those boundaries. They needed to have a little bit more thought. They needed to do a little bit more research before they just arrived with a question or with information or whatever. And that really helped that workflow, because people were being more considered, and they were then being taught to consider her time and their own time better. So it took a good few weeks for them to start implementing it and to make it work. And obviously you have all the teething issues and everything, but just by putting some simple boundaries and processes in place, it actually really helped the team get more organized, and it actually helped people develop faster. And taking that coaching approach where you're asking people to think through things before they just come and blurb it out, it does make all the difference. And you stop hand holding them and they start taking responsibility and accountability, and it just creates a more harmonious team environment.
And I think, picking up on that point of protecting yourself, the other thing I would add is the importance of still having time for yourself. So the temptation often when you feel under pressure because your boss is under pressure can be to not do the gym, not go for the walk at lunchtime, not take lunch breaks. So all of those simple things that we all know are better for us than not doing them, it's so easy to sacrifice them. And that just really adds to you become less efficient, less effective, less productive. And any of those things you can do on the odd occasion. But if those are becoming routine and you are not getting any time for yourself in your day, your week, then that is going to make everything magnified. The feeling of being overwhelmed, the feeling of finding it challenging. If you're not sleeping properly, if you're not looking after yourself, if you're not looking after food, drink, sleep, nutrition, all of those kind of fundamentals, then those things get worse. And absolutely, I get that these things are not easy to do. And probably we've all been there where we know what we should be doing and we're not doing it. But I think it's just really key to say that actually look at, are you maintaining some of those healthy habits? And if not, then build those in, because as much as it might feel like you've got no time for anything but work, maintaining that is only going to last for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the key thing, isn't it? Because you can suggest to the team, we're going to try this for a month and then we're going to see how it goes. And then you can reevaluate to see if it's working. And then you can make some further changes, because I think there's a real danger when you start making these changes where you go, okay, this is what we're going to do now. And then even if it doesn't feel like it's working, you just carry on because you said you were making that change. So you've got to see it through. So I think just saying we need to ease the pressure, we need to achieve a certain goal or objective, we need to do something different. We're going to try it for 2 weeks or a month, and then we're going to evaluate it. We're going to see where we're up to, and then we're going to decide, is this working for us, or do we need to try something different? And I suppose at that point, when you're evaluating it, then you can bring in the opinions of other team members if they spotted anything that could help. As soon as people become aware that there's an issue or there's pressure or something needs to be resolved, people are usually pretty good in spotting different ways that things could work better, or providing their opinion on a situation, or maybe something they've spotted because of the job that they're doing. So I think it's good to say, we're going to start making some changes, but then we're going to evaluate, and then I want your opinion. I want you to tell me your thoughts and feelings around this and any ideas on how we can make it better. And I think if you do that with the team, you can continue to make those changes, refine things, streamline things, bring the team closer together as well.
And with your boss, just listening to that, I was reminded of a time when I had a boss that had just a huge amount on. The whole day was pinging from meeting to meeting. I could see what pressure they were under. And what we did was sat down for a couple of hours and just went through, get everything out of your head, tell me what all of the pressures are that are on you, and let's agree what are the priorities that you're focused on, what are the things that we as a team are going to support with, and what are the things that might feel like they're a massive priority, but when we compare them to some of the other things, we don't have to start them immediately, or they might not be as high a priority. So actually being collaborative with your boss and having some of those conversations, if you've previously had a good relationship, that can be a really helpful conversation to have, of just, let's get everything out on the table, let's understand all of the things that are happening. And that, when I had that conversation with my boss, was, okay, let's take these things, me and the team will take those, you're going to focus on those things, but then also there are these that we will then revisit. So it became something that we could then come back to. And I remember that conversation, and then 2 weeks later, my boss saying to me, I can't believe how much progress I've made on these things. And it was because the other stuff wasn't living rent free in her head, because she knew that I was taking that. But we wouldn't have got to that had we not have had that initial conversation that said, let's get everything out, let's just understand it, let's work together to know who's picking what up and what might be at risk or what might be a lower priority. Is there anything else that people can do when they're in this situation other than come to you and work with you to find a new job?
I think the key thing is initially just taking a moment to think what is going on. I think that's always the first thing. And yeah, absolutely. If you think it's a new job that you need, then definitely give me a shout and talk through the options. But I think initially just take that moment to pause, because some of these things can resolve themselves, and you can still job search down the line, but you might be able to create more calm within your current role, which will definitely free up your headspace in your job search. So if that you've hit a ceiling point, or you know it's time to move on, but you've got all of this chaos going on, I guarantee you will go into that job search feeling burnt out, feeling upset, and there's a whole range of emotions that you're going to go through. It will definitely impair your judgment on the roles that you go for, how you come across in interviews. Like this, the impact is huge. There's a real ripple effect. So I think the first thing you can do if you're finding yourself in this situation is just pause and go, okay, can I create some calmness in this current situation before I start moving? And if you can't, fine, let's get you out of there as soon as possible. Like, it's still possible to job search under pressure in your current role, it's absolutely fine. But if you can create some calmness within that situation, it really will help, and you'll feel better in that job search process as well.
And if you are listening to this and you feel like, yeah, maybe a job search might not be for me just yet, but I do sometimes need some help in practical guidance on how do I handle these types of situations at work, then Career Club absolutely is the place for you. Once a month, we hold a career clinic where you've got direct access to us to answer your questions, support, guide, ask some coaching questions, and really help you to find solutions to those things. And you can ask us questions throughout the month as well via the group. So if that's helpful for you, then do check out the link. There is a code to get your first month for £1 that you can find in the show notes. And as ever, if there are topics that you'd like us to cover, then please do drop us a message. We're always happy to respond to topics via the podcast as well. And we will be back next week with another episode. Exciting news from us. If you're an ambitious leader or manager earning 50k or more and you're ready to take your career to the next level, we have an opportunity for you. Introducing Catalyst Career Club, your secret weapon for unlocking career success. As a member, you'll get access to monthly live training sessions, exclusive job opportunities, and the ability to get personalised advice from us on your toughest career challenges.
We've helped thousands of driven leaders like you secure significant pay rises, land dream roles, and thrive in their careers. And now we want to support you in achieving your most ambitious career goals too. Membership is just $6.99 per month with no contract or tie-in. And as a special bonus for being our podcast listeners, you can use the code podcast at checkout to get your first month for just £1. Head over to pamelalangan.com/Catalyst Career Club to sign up now, and we'll see you inside.